the strategic omni-channel digital marketing playbook, in which we'll talk through how to design, set up, and optimize omni-channel digital campaigns. I'm Jen Flanagan, the Vice President of Marketing with AdTaxi, and I'm joined by Brian Kroll, our Vice President of Sales and Strategic Accounts, who will be presenting today. We have a lot to cover, so we'll get started right away. But first, as Brian goes through his presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box. We'll have some time at the end to answer as many questions as we can. Over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So thank you guys for joining today. This is the agenda of what we're going to run through. So do quick introductions, then we'll talk through the foundational assumptions for the strategic discussion today. We'll go through some campaign setup strategies, some optimization strategies, and then at the end, assuming that we've got some time left within the hour, which should have a 5-10 minutes, we can do some Q&A sessions based on the questions that you guys enter in through the box. So thank you guys very much again for taking the time to attend. My name is Brian Kroll. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Strategic Accounts for AdTaxi, and I officially joined AdTaxi in May of 2012. I'm on the IAB's Performance Marketing Committee. I developed AdTaxi's Magellan optimization algorithm, and I'm very passionate about digital marketing. And I live currently in the San Francisco Bay Area with my wife and son. So a little bit about AdTaxi, assuming you guys have been on our site, that's how you registered for this webinar, but we've got 230 ops employees across the country in 12 different regional offices. We have a very high retention rate for our accounts because everything we do is custom and it's performance driven. Every business is different, and we believe that people matter just as much as technology. So what we're trying to do is leverage everything we can across our platforms, regardless of where they are, what platform, to look at the data and drive as much performance as possible from our marketing campaigns. We've been a Google Premier partner for quite a long time. Our staff has over 700 certifications, which is 5 to 10x most other digital agencies. As part of that partnership, we actually won the 2016 Google Channel Sales Innovation Award for our Magellan search optimization tool. We're also a Bing Elite partner, and we also were just recently named an International News and Media Association Media Award finalist for Best Marketing Solution for an Advertising Client. So, what I want to now break into, now that the introductions are done, is talk a little bit about sort of the assumptions that we have for the strategic discussion we're going to have today. So today's consumers, this is a blend of research that we get from eMarketer, from Google, but today's consumers are constantly cross-shopping. People are spending a lot more time researching online, but they're making decisions a lot more quickly when they're making decisions on when to interact with a brand. Most of the time, consumers are largely brand agnostic. There's a lot of price competitiveness out there, and people are spending a lot more time on their mobile devices. There's a lot more research happening using multiple different devices. So people are using their phone, their tablet, their work laptop or desktop, their home laptop or desktop, lots of different device activity happening when people are researching. And there's been an explosion in use of videos during the research process as well, too. So these are some of the things that we wanted to sort of, set as a sort of the foundation for when we're talking about an omni-channel discussion about the way that consumers are doing research today before they're interacting and choosing brands or service providers to work with. We typically see, again, for the part of this discussion, about 6 different sort of typical digital campaign scenarios. These are not by any means an exhaustive list, but this is just sort of, if you're to break it down, this is typically what we see. There's e-commerce campaigns. We have brick and mortar retail campaigns, meaning somebody wants to drive somebody in store to purchase. There's typically a blend of the above. So someone may have an e-commerce portal. They also would have brick and mortar stores. We'll have event promotion campaigns, whether it's for concerts or events, races, etc. There could be lead generation campaigns. So that could be for home services or something along those lines where you're funneling something to a sales team or for automotive, etc. Then there's also awareness or advocacy campaigns. And that's where typically what we're trying to do is either bring brand awareness to the forefront, get somebody familiar with a product, service, or offering, or we're looking to influence opinion, whether it's like in the political realm or something along those lines. So that said, the first thing that we typically look at when we're talking about these campaigns is what are we going to do from a geographic targeting perspective. So we typically recommend that at the strategic account level, or any account level actually, that you want to align your marketing budgets accordingly with your geography and where your business is coming from. So for any given business, this is definitely different when you're talking about like an e-commerce perspective, where that could be anyone, anywhere. But for the purpose of today's call, so the commonalities that we're talking about here would be from a marketing segment, about 75% of your marketing budget digitally should go towards your primary market. And that would typically be the market that's closest to the consumer, typically will have the fewest amount of competitors for what you're doing. And typically people who are going to be in that segment are going to have the highest lifetime customer value for your business. Beyond that, we call your secondary market segment. This would be sort of that mid-range proximity to consumer. There may be other competitors in there, and you may have sort of a mid-range lifetime customer value. This would be people where, you know, if it's a brick and mortar type store, they may have to drive quite a ways, or you might be on the edge of their service area. But it's going to be where we recommend putting 15 to 20% of your budget into that secondary focus. For the outlier, for the tertiary market, that'd be maybe 5 to 10% of your focus, if at all, and that would be where you're sort of the farthest proximity to the consumer. You may have quite a few other competitors in this space, and typically what we see for businesses is that the farther you get away from the business, you have the lowest possible lifetime customer value. But typically when we're aligning budgets, let's say you have a $10,000 monthly budget, $7,500 of that would go towards your primary geography. You know, $1,500 to $2,000 would go towards your secondary, and then you know, $500 to $1,000 would go towards your tertiary. So if you're not sure what your geo-targets are, there's a couple of different ways to go about it. The easiest way would be to analyze your Google Analytics data. I have some acronyms in here, so I'll try and spell all those out. And the easiest way to do that is look at your goals, look at where your conversions are coming from, and then filter those out by city. So you can export a list there. You'll be able to see by city and by region. It's a secondary dimensions tab in Google Analytics. You can see where all your conversions are coming from. That can give you a good idea, at least in terms of what Google thinks for how they're geolocating people as to where all your conversions are coming from. If you have an extensive CRM file where you have a lot of different customer records, you can export that. And the best thing to do there would be to look at all of the zip codes, dedupe them, and then run a query in Excel or something along those lines where you can say, all right, these are my top performing zip codes, and then rank them in quartiles or in thirds. So here's my top performing third, bottom performing third, middle performing third, and then that's how you can use that to determine where your marketing is coming from. Typically, we look at, you know, what's the historical data for aligning budgets, but also we want to make sure that we're not ignoring the future potential opportunity. So if you're looking at, you know, let's say you know that there's a lot more business coming from a certain segment and you're not getting as much that you could be from there, you know, maybe that would come into the equation. And the best way to sort of determine that as a best practice is you can use Google AdWords as a business intelligence tool. You can look at impression share for the key keywords that you would use in your primary geo, and Google's tracking everything everybody's searching. So if you see that maybe you're only winning 5 to 10% of the impressions for your key keywords in your primary geography, that would tell you that there's a lot more opportunity there than you're potentially looking for what your primary service offering would be. So once we've got the geography set up, now what we want to look at is how do we filter data from a performance standpoint so that we're going to best meet the business objectives. So with that, everything when digital marketing relies heavily on the website, obviously. So what we want to try and do with our campaigns is implement a structured and consistent data layer using some sort of a tag management platform. It could be Google Tag Manager, it could be Signal, it could be Adobe. There's a lot of different potential tag management platforms out there. But what we're trying to do is look and define what the metrics that matter would be. So it's not just a site visit. Ultimately, what we're looking for is some sort of user engagement on the site. And that user engagement typically leads to somebody moving down the funnel into taking what we would call a buying signal visit. And that's somebody interacting with a key page on the site that would signal intent. So if you're an e-commerce platform, that would look like potentially someone looking at a product detail page, examining the price of the product, the specs, et cetera, shipping costs, all of those fun things. If you're an automotive dealer, that would be somebody who's looking at a vehicle description page. It could be a product service offering page based on what you do if you're in home services. That would be sort of the starting place. And then from there, what you want to see is where a consumer is going to different conversion events. So that could be a contact us form. That could be something where somebody adds something to a cart for e-commerce and eventually checks out. It could be something along the lines of automotive where it's, value your trade for a vehicle, or a location page. If you're brick and mortar, to get to your store, people have to know where you are. So essentially, what we see is people are moving from engagement to buying signal visits, and then either one or multiple conversion events. But typically when somebody hits a conversion event, they don't just stop there. They go back and forth into buying signal, because this is the research phase. And so people are typically looking through to see, what services you offer. If they're filling out like a contact request form, they may be doing multiple different activities. It's really in this area between the buying signal and the conversion events where we want to focus on the key metrics that really matter. At some point during the consumer journey, that activity on your site is going to cease abruptly. And at that point, what we want to try and do is listen for that when somebody stops. And then at that point, you're not going to serve ads to them and either remove them from the marketing equation. You can either assume that they've taken themselves out of the market, or that they've already purchased from you. And then you start to either remarket them for repurchasing or remove them from marketing because you don't want to remarket somebody who's already made contact. But ultimately, we typically do this through a series of pixels. Pixels are code that are attached to the ads, and we're tracking this across all the different platforms so that we can see where people are moving through the site, both post-click or post-view, and measuring those events, and then putting values on those so that we're able to determine the right amount of media to spend on different channels. The other way that we like to think about this is, if you look at the typical Keynesian funnel, from awareness all the way down to intent, consideration, and purchase and decision, we want to try and align the right objective with each stage of the user's journey. That's really key to success. And it's not really thinking about it in terms of the entire website is one metric. It's not just about driving people there and just getting as much traffic as you possibly can. It's about getting the right traffic. So what we're looking at is from a prospecting versus remarketing side of things. Prospecting would be, I want to find people who have never been to my site before, and I want to drive them to my site through any channel or means necessary. And the goal for my prospecting campaign shouldn't be conversion. The goal should be getting as many engaged site visitors to my site as possible. And I want to assign a different KPI or key performance indicator for my prospecting campaign than I would for a remarketing campaign. And that would have an effective cost per acquisition of X to drive somebody through to an engaged site visit. Once you get somebody to engage site visit, you stop on the prospecting side, and that's where remarketing takes over. And remarketing should have a different KPI in terms of how we're filtering the metrics. So that KPI is now, we've got buying signal visits. How do we push those people down further into the funnel so that they're now converting? And ultimately, prospecting and remarketing campaigns should really work together, like sort of imagine an omnipresent assembly line. You have a dedicated portion of your budget that's going out trying to find new people who have never been to your site before, and you're using a segment pixel for that. And so basically that same segment pixel is what you would then use to remarket to those people, but we can use it to exclude people who have currently been to your site. That way you know that your prospecting budget is 100% going out to people who haven't been to your site before, at least since you've got your cookies or tags down. And then that your remarketing budget is only going towards those engaged visitors and people who are moving down the funnel. If somebody is hitting your site just at the homepage, they're bouncing off, there's no action taken, don't even bother remarketing those people and try and filter that noise out. We recommend that you really look at just that engagement level and really work on focusing to push people down the funnel and get them to do business with you. Typically, what we see is when you focus on this approach, when you focus on user engagement and when you focus on upstream conversions, you are going to get the downstream conversions. So this is a data visualization of an automotive dealer that we work with, where when we work on driving people to vehicle description page visits upstream, what you end up seeing is that downstream, the price quotes follow. That's what this dealer is really interested in, is they want to get people to fill out an e-price quote for a car so that their business service center can follow up with the consumer, get the consumer to come into the showroom. And ultimately what you see is that as the vehicle description page visits increase, you see an increase in price quotes, but there's always a lag time. And it depends on the type of business that you are and the products and service that you offer. That lag time between a up funnel visit and a lower funnel visit may be a week, maybe a couple of weeks, it may be a couple of hours, it may be the same visit. It just depends on the business and the price point. Typically what we see for higher price point purchases, like for automotive or for expensive luxury travel, home buying, etc., there's going to be a lot more time decay between someone first routing to the site, making it into, while they're in the research phase, looking at the product detail pages, and then eventually buying. For the lower priced objects, where it's something where somebody may be looking at buying, a set of headphones or whatever, that may be something that'd be a faster transaction. But there's always a time decay, and we always want to try and listen for as much of that time as possible between when they're first making it to the site, making that buying signal or engaged visit, and then finally taking that conversion event. And then when it comes to prospecting versus remarketing, there's lots of different ways that we can build this out. And typically in an omnichannel world, we have got 5 basic channels that we've kind of broken out here. And what I'm aligning in this matrix here is how we align these channels by geo-market segment, and then also prospecting and remarketing by platform. So the 5 channels would be search engine marketing. So that would be paid advertising on Google, Bing, on search engines of the century. That would be social media marketing. So that would be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Display advertising would be the graphical display banner ads. That would be that you'd see on desktop, mobile devices, etc. Native advertising would be paid native, and that's typically going to be something that's in feed, that's going to be focused on blending in with content to a degree, but really using something to promote thought leadership. And then video marketing, that's where you'd be doing pre-roll marketing or potentially outstream marketing for video. And that could be across any different platforms. It could be across YouTube. It could be across the advertising exchanges or video exchanges. But ultimately, when we're thinking about a prospecting and remarketing campaign, we really want to focus, again, the 75% of our budget should go towards that primary geography. And all of these campaigns, all of these different platforms are very valuable at driving consumers to a site from both a prospecting and remarketing standpoint. And within the primary geography, we highly recommend a blend of both of these, right? So you're going to have search, and search is going to have prospecting and remarketing, social will have prospecting and remarketing, display, and so on, all the way down the line. And the amount of the blend is going to be determined a little bit on the type of business and sort of where you sit in the funnel, particularly. If you're a thin market versus a thin market type of business where you've only got a certain amount of people in market at any given time, that allocation may vary. But ultimately, from a primary perspective, it should be prospecting and remarketing within your core geography. Once you move outside of your core geography and you start getting into the secondary portion of your geography, search should definitely still be omnipresent, should be prospecting and remarketing. But on the social side and display and native, what we advocate is basically focus on prospecting, but really look at remarketing when you're getting outside of your primary geo. On the video side, we advocate going for remarketing only at the secondary geo market level, and that's just because with video, it's very much higher funnel, and you want to try and use video when you're outside of your primary geo to tell a story of why somebody should work with you. And I'll get into that a little bit later. When you're getting into your tertiary or your farthest reach away from your core geography, from here, search should definitely still be prospecting and remarketing. Everything else should be remarketing only. We find that the farther out you go with the search sits at the bottom of the funnel usually, and it's very much I want to go. It's high intent on anything from a search query. So that's going to be something where definitely prospecting and remarketing is going to be key for the search side of things. Everything else should be remarketing only here, because the farther out you go, the likelihood somebody doing business with you who didn't arrive through search or through some other channel is typically going to decrease quite dramatically, and you're going to have higher cost per acquisition for those types of campaigns. I have an asterisk here for search on the remarketing side. And what I'm talking about on the asterisk for remarketing on search is not necessarily remarketing through AdWords with display, or rather what I'm talking about is remarketing your text ads in search in AdWords. And that would be, once somebody's been to your site, if they leave your site and then they are going to do additional searches for the same keywords you're bidding on, you want to change that text ad for that person so that you can really talk through the business differentiators you have, whether it's reviews or something along those lines of why somebody should work with you. If they've left your site after searching you out and then they do another search for, let's say, a Ford dealer near me, and you're a Ford dealer and they didn't buy what you wanted, but you see them searching for that again, change up your text ad and give them a different message. That's what I'm talking about from remarketing there. So now I'm going to dive into platform-specific strategies across all of those different digital marketing platforms that we've just discussed. So this is something that's highly customized. It's going to vary by business, but typically what we're looking at on the search side of things is on prospecting. You want to have what we call thematically grouped ad groups and keywords. And an example of this would be, let's say I'm an automotive dealer, and most people have bought a car before in their life, so that's why I find this is generally a pretty good example. If you're a Ford dealer, you would want to have different ad groups for different types of keywords. And you want to make sure that all of your, let's say, Ford Focus ad groups, where the text ad copy is related to every type of keyword for Ford Focus. You may have truck groups, you may have service groups, parts groups, etc. But you want to make sure that when you break it out, that your ad groups, you may have 3 to 4 ads per ad group and multiple different keywords within there, but those should all be thematically grouped. The reason for that is that allows us to then see what's really working at that level, and it allows for optimization adjustments on the back end to really drive the best possible performance from your search campaign. It's a Google best practice, and it's something that we're coached on as a Google Premier partner. The other thing you want to do is really focus on high impression share for your primary unique selling proposition, whatever that is for your business, for your primary campaigns, for your primary geo. And by splitting it out into primary, secondary, and tertiary geos on your search campaigns, you're going to have a lot of different campaigns running. But what that allows you to do is to really know what sort of market saturation you have for your unique selling proposition within your primary geo. And we like to suggest that you shoot for a 90% impression share. And for those of you who aren't familiar with impression share, it's a metric in Google. And essentially what it means is the amount of impressions that are showing up that my ads are also eligible to show up for. So if I have 50% impression share within a primary geography, that means that I'm only showing up for 50% of the searches that are happening. And that could either be because of my budget, or it could be because of my rank or my quality score. But either way, if you have your unique selling proposition and you know your primary geography, we recommend being at least 90% impression share for your key features, key benefits, key products within that area. As you expand out from there, then you can focus on maybe just some of your best-selling products or your true unique products. Still want to have high impression share for those, because that's going to get you the best possible chance for business. But by breaking out the geography this way for your campaigns, the last thing you would want to do is spread yourself so thin that people who are right in your core area, who are the best possible chance to be your customers and have the highest value, are never going to see your ads because you're spreading yourself too thin budget-wise. So another key best practice on search is absolutely sync up your Google Analytics with AdWords. That allows you to do multiple different things. One, it allows you to track goals as conversions, and you can import those back into AdWords. That way you can see essentially for any given keyword, how that keyword's performing on site. And that allows you to optimize to the lowest effective cost per acquisition within each ad group at the keyword level, using bid adjustments to sync that up and drive that through. Two, if you have an agency or someone who you're working with who's not doing this, this allows you to, it sets up for ultimate transparency. All of the cost flows through. You're able to see the cost per click, cost per action on site, and you can do some really good things with the optimization side of things to really hone in and build a high-performing search marketing strategy. And this isn't just for AdWords. This goes for Bing as well too. I'm just using AdWords as the more prevalent platform in terms of what most people are using for search from a consumer standpoint. Continuing on the prospecting side, there's focusing on the position in terms of where you're bidding for your keywords is key. You really want to focus on anywhere from position 1 to 3 for desktop. It doesn't have to necessarily be there, but Google made a change for those of you who've been doing this for a while. Google made a change last year. There used to be up to 12 different search ads on a page. You had 3 to 4 at the top, then you had a few more on the right-hand side of a desktop page, and you had a few more at the bottom. They removed all of those on the right-hand side mid-year last year. And so the focus is now really position 1 through 3 on desktop. You don't have to always be position number 1. You may find that by bidding for position number 3, you end up getting a better, you pay a lower cost per click, you end up getting a higher conversion there. So you need to play with that a little bit, and it depends on your business. But typically that's where you're going to get sort of like the best possible traffic coming through the site from those top 3 positions. On mobile, position 1 or 2 is key. On a smartphone, you really only have 2 spots at the top for paid search ads. And a lot of times with location extensions or other additional extensions that Google puts in there, it really dominates the top of the page. So on the prospecting side for mobile, being in 1 to 3 for desktop is key, 1 to 2 for mobile is key. The other thing we recommend is day parting as needed for your prospecting campaigns. And what I mean by day parting would be, let's say you're a home services, like a plumber or something along those lines, and you don't have an answering service, you're a small shop, you don't have people who are going to be taking calls after hours. If you day part your campaign to when you're going to be there, when you're going to be also the phones, that allows your budget to go a lot further and allows for you to grab as many of those impressions that are happening and searches that are happening during those times of day when you're business. So definitely day part is needed, and you can adjust that for your geographies as well. On the remarketing side for text ads, again, as I was mentioning on the previous slide, somebody's already been to your site, and then they're doing searches for the products and services that you offer. Definitely bid for remarketing there and bid for your top sort of primary keywords. Change up that text in that ad. Focus on why someone should buy from you as much as possible. We also recommend that you would exclude branded searches for this, and branded would be your business name. Unless your business name is something, like, Brian's Termite Service, in which case Termite Service might get a lot of clicks. If you do an exact match on that, anybody who's already been to my site, if they're searching me out by name, maybe they're a past customer, I wouldn't necessarily want to do text ad remarketing to those folks. But for anybody else, if it was Termite Services, Bay Area, whatever that would be, in that case, I would absolutely want to make sure that if somebody had been on my site and then left and then made another search for that same query, same keyword, that I'm giving them a reason as to why they should buy from you, because clearly they're still shopping. On the paid social marketing side, and this would be, I'm focusing primarily on Facebook and Instagram here because that's where most of the dollars are going. On the prospecting side, custom audiences are absolutely crucial. They're also typically the highest performers from prospecting campaigns. What I mean by custom audiences would be that Facebook has an amazing ability, because of all of the data that people are giving Facebook, all Facebook users are gleaning from it. Facebook has an amazing ability to match up that data with audiences from offline data and also from online data. And so they're able to take that offline data. Typically, the key is going to be a mobile phone number or a personal email, but also it could be anything from name, street address, etc. They've got 14 different data points that they can match up. But if you were to upload your CRM data from past purchasers from either different products or services or just in general, you can build an audience in Facebook, and then you can use that audience to build a lookalike model and target the top 1 or 2% of people within your custom geography that quote unquote look like those customers from Facebook's perspective, and put your ad message in front of those folks. So it's a huge tool. You definitely want to exclude any kind of initial audience when targeting a lookalike in this offline data, because you wouldn't want to target people who just recently purchased from you from your CRM and show them ads, but you'd exclude those folks and target the people who look just like them. So for automotive dealers, we do this a lot where we'll focus on specific brands, because people who have specific models, a truck buyer may be completely different from a hybrid buyer. But essentially what you're going to try and do is parse out all of that data and then build those lookalike models. You need to have at least 100 matches in Facebook, and they have about a 75% match rate. So if you can get 175, 150 different customer records and upload into Facebook, it's a huge tool that you can use from a prospecting, predictive modeling standpoint to try and find new audiences within your primary, secondary, and tertiary geos. The other thing you can do with this would be online data. Facebook's Pixel, when you place it down across your site, you can set it to gather those audience data points. And so from that, you would want to build lookalikes based on your top products and services. And you can build different ones based on where people are going on your site. So if you have multiple different products or services that you offer, you can set up different lookalikes for each one of those. And then once you hit sort of critical mass in Facebook, you can start doing predictive modeling and lookalike targeting for each of those different data points. And, with Facebook, all of the data is secure. You upload it into your browser and everything becomes instantly hashed in your browser. So you don't have to worry about Facebook getting your customer list. They can't do anything with it. So I know that that's a concern sometimes businesses have, but you can find that online through their website about what happens with that data. But ultimately, once you've got that done, then you want to start varying your ad types based on the objective. So for prospecting, what we typically find would be using either single image or carousel ads side by side. You can also use video ads for prospecting. Facebook has a really cool Canvas ad feature that can be really great to tell a story, but it requires some additional build out. But there's lots of different ad types, and you want to try and vary your ad types based on the objective. Day part is needed in Facebook as well too. What you might consider doing on the prospecting side for your primary and your secondary geos would be, I live in the Bay Area. It's a huge commuter market. People from the East Bay who, if they're driving into the city, where I live in the East Bay might be a primary market for somebody, but I might work in downtown San Francisco. That might be the secondary market. For during business hours, so Monday through Friday from say 8 to 5, when people might be commuting, you expand your prospecting out to that secondary geo. But then when someone's on evenings and weekends, when they're home, that's where you'd want to restrict that probably to just the primary geo, because that's where the folks are going to be who are most likely to be buying from you. That works across all platforms, by the way, not just Facebook. It could be across search, it could be across display, etc. On the remarketing side with Facebook and Instagram, you want to remarket to the highest value visitors. Typically, what you would want to do would be exclude any kind of service-related pages. So if there's a place where people can log onto your site to check like the current process of an order, or maybe it's checking for shipping, whatever that may be, typically want to exclude for remarketing for those folks. And you also want to exclude people who are just visiting like the home page only, or a bounce visit. And there's ways to do that with tag management so that you can set tags to fire that way. On the remarketing side, if you're a business that relies heavily on online leads, Facebook has a really cool ad unit that's called a lead ad format. And so let's say somebody hits your contact us form, but they don't fill anything out. You could remarket to people who have visited that page, and you can use a Facebook lead ad to reach out to the user. And that lead ad basically allows that person to fill out details directly in Facebook. By clicking on that ad to learn more, they can put in their contact information. When they hit submit, that information is sent directly through to you in Facebook, and then in your Facebook portal, you can download that information and then reach out and contact that person. And if you don't get any response on the lead ads over, let's say a 48 to 72 hour or maybe even longer period, then you can switch over to that user and start targeting standard carousel or standard image formats. And typically on the remarketing side too, and this goes across platforms, don't show the same ads that you're showing on the prospecting side. You really want to focus your messaging on the why buy from me proposition. Why should I care? Why should I buy from your business? That's what's really going to help put that user in contact with you, or have them be a direct purchase. On the native side of things, native is really powerful because it looks like content in paid native, and this is going to be ads that will typically show up in feed. They could show up also at the bottom of the page potentially as well too, but they generate higher user engagement than traditional display ads. Consumers prefer them. They're typically more than display ads, and it's generally because the format allows them to be more interesting and less annoying and intrusive to consumers. So unlike pop-up ads, which show up kind of in the lower part of this matrix down here, native ads are a great way to to really get thought leadership out. And with native ads, you could either drive somebody to your site or to, like, let's say category or product pages. You can also send people to your blog for thought leadership, where if you're doing something really interesting and different and you have blog posts there that separate you out from your competition, native ads are a great way to drive folks there as well too. So when we talk about prospecting strategies now, and I took search out of this is going to be on the programmatic side here, but for real-time bidding, and this real-time bidding is across display, traditional displays, for native, and also for video, a prospecting strategy should look something like this. And you're basically taking a blend of different audiences, and that could be third-party data. So it could be data that's gleaned from any of the big data providers, Excelate, BlueKai, Oracle, Adobe, all of the MasterCard. There's lots of different data providers out there where you can buy third-party, anonymous, non-personally identifiable data. You want to blend that. You can do first-party data predictive targeting. So if you know enough about your audience based on, say if Google Analytics has some great audience insights, you can find out, general age and gender demographic information, build that out into a data target. You can do contextual or category type targeting. So let's say if you're in real estate, you could target real estate type sites, maybe home improvement type sites, et cetera. Then you can also do private marketplace buys. And private marketplaces are available through advertising exchanges where, let's say, people wouldn't necessarily put their inventory out on a site in general, but you can negotiate private marketplace buys. And ultimately what you want to try and do with an approach is, with your prospecting, be targeted, but run multiple different ad groups based on your budget. And all of those different ads should really focus on driving an engaged site visit. So you want to try and get as many people from the prospecting side to the site as possible. If it's a video, you want to try and get 100% of a view for a video, and then from there, remarketing takes over. And the best practice is, prospecting, exclude current website visitors from all of your targeting segments. That way, your prospecting budget is 100% going out to find new potential users for you. On the remarketing side, once you've got people to your site, there's lots of different things you can do with bid modification so that you're able to get back in front of those people based on the level of engagement they're showing. So a standard engaged visitor, and this would be not just a bounce order, but a standard engaged visitor, let's say we bid 100% for that person. But if you see somebody who's showing some significant intent on your site, they're spending a lot of time researching, maybe I'd want to bid 125% of normal for those people to ensure that I get in front of them. And then even further down yet, if I've got a buying signal visit or there's a high value referral, let's say I'm an appliance dealer and I stock GE or Whirlpool and I get referrals over from their site, you want to definitely remarket heavy to those people because they found you during the research phase and you want to make sure that they come buy from you. So that would be an even heavier bid. And by excluding people down the funnel, what it allows you to do is also segment your messaging so that you can sort of lead people in a storyboard sort of way to tell them why they should buy from you creatively as they're moving through the funnel process. There's also things from a strategy side on real-time bidding. There's ways that we can do dynamic bids versus static bids. And with this, what we found is that from a prospecting and remarketing standpoint, the more ad impressions you show to somebody, the less likely over time, if they haven't converted, the less likely they are to convert. So instead of bidding the same amount every single time you show an ad to somebody, if you decrease that bid every single time and ratchet it down, you're able to end up getting lower eCPAs, and you end up then finding the right CPM to pay at every frequency based on that user's engagement and their reaction to the ads. Excuse me. Same thing for the recency side. Recency means how long it was somebody was on your site. And so typically when the longer it takes from somebody who they've been to your site before they come back, the higher your CPA goes. And these are all just samples shown here. But somebody who's been to your site, and especially if they're doing the buying signal, you want to bid really high on a recency for people who've been there 0 to 1 days, 1 to 7 days, et cetera. Over time, the odds are that someone's not going to come back. And so you don't want to bid more than what that user is really worth. So you can end up getting lower cost per acquisitions by tailoring the impressions toward the schedule that is going to have the highest conversion rates. On the creative alignment side, it's not just bidding and it's not just setup. Creative is critically important as well too. So you really want to try and have, on the prospecting side, use your predictive modeling for your top selling products and services. Serve ads or videos showing the features of those items. On the prospecting side, again, use native thought leadership And really the call to action is to learn more, to get people over to your site and get them to be an engaged visitor. On the remarketing side, once somebody's on your site, again, tell them why that customer should buy from you. Testimonials work great. If you have testimonials that are approved to use from people who have purchased from you before, testimonials and ads can do wonders. Potentially, you could also do, using the YouTube Director app, you could also remarket to people with a video on YouTube saying, thank you for visiting my website. Just something that's going to be standard, not standard, that will get people's attention, because that's really what you're doing on the remarketing side is really telling them why they should buy from you. So wrapping up here, omnichannel programmatic optimization strategies, there's a couple of different ways to go about it. But before I jump into that, typically what we recommend is you want to try and get, when you're talking about optimization, you really want to try and get a level playing field for ad performance data. So you want to focus on the metrics that matter, and it's not clicks, it's not click-through rate, or it's not a cost per click, especially on the programmatic side. It's all about conversions on site and goal-based conversions. Could also be offline conversions, so that could be phone calls, store visits, etc. Pixels from all the different platforms. All of these different platforms have the ability to use pixels, and pixels are great because they don't just rely on post-click, they also rely on post-view, and most of them. And so what that really gives you is a 360-degree view of the interactions that are happening on your site, and you can integrate that data with your performance modeling, and that way you're not 100% reliant on last click attribution. And this is important because Google Analytics is 100% last click. If somebody was exposed to a display ad and then they searched you out organically, made it to your site and bought from you, you would think that your organic was really the driver for that. But actually it was the display ad, that prospecting display ad on Facebook or wherever, that actually drove that action. So you want to make sure that you're detecting that and seeing it, and that factors into your optimization activity. Make sure you're definitely tracking cross-device activity. I mentioned at the beginning that device proliferation with consumers is huge. A lot of people are starting research on one device and finishing on another, or going back between devices in the process. So Facebook is inherently cross-device. Google is cross-device now. A lot of display platforms are cross-device, but make sure you're tracking that cross-device so that you can really get a good view of the action. And again, break everything down into an effective cost per action, or ECPA. You really shouldn't care about impressions. You really shouldn't care about clicks. You should care about what's my budget doing and how many actions am I getting from my budget. And you really need to determine and clearly define what success looks like for you based on your end outcome. So if I say, hey, I've got this budget, I want to increase quotes by over 200% over the next 6 months, boom, that's my plan. Now we know it, and let's go ahead and start optimizing towards that. The best way when you have multiple different platforms in play as well would be, let's look at a third-party agnostic benchmark, and typically that's Google Analytics. You can do some cool reports in Google Analytics, and you want to start to optimize over time so that you can see your price quotes or whatever that would be increase. So for instance, here you see June of 2016 through March 2017, price quotes are climbing across the board. That's something that we want to see. We know our media mix is working. So in the optimization options, there's really two main options that we run into from businesses. And the first option is the option that everything competes. And what I mean by that is, okay, I've got different platforms I'm running on, but I have a single KPI. I want as many leads as possible, or I want the highest return on ad spend as possible. So in the option of everything competing, you set up budgets across all these different platforms, push go, and then you start optimizing to whatever's going to drive the lowest possible performance. Now, the only downside to this is that typically optimization option number one focuses really only on one stage, and it's really about that evaluation and purchase phase. When we find that when we run these types of campaigns, because video typically tends to be higher funnel, native also typically tends to be higher funnel, social and RTB, because of the heavy remarketing components on those are typically going to win. And so when you're focusing only on one stage, most of the budget's going to be pushed towards social and RTB directly out of the gate. And that's good if you want to show ROI, but it's bad if you're ignoring the customer journey, because it's never linear, nor is it instant. People are going to be moving down the funnel, and they may be moving back up based on their unique situation. But rarely is it instant. It happens over time. So just one thing to, if that's all your budget can afford and you really need to focus on, I just need to have everything compete, then I would just say, let's just run social and display and search, and just focus on that bottom of the funnel and drive everything there. However, the other option that we see is that typically everything should harmonize. And what I mean by that is, again, you're recognizing that there's a consumer journey happening, and we're using all of the different platforms to their strengths. So with video, the goal for video should be the lowest cost for completed video. You want people to watch your video. With native, it should be getting somebody onto the site with sort of a mid-level, mid-funnel conversion. Social and display are going to be more low-funnel conversions. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is harmonize so that each of these platforms is doing the right thing with the right medium and the right creative to drive somebody through to purchase and conversion. And with this, what you're end up doing is you're focusing and dedicating a set amount of budget towards each of these different platforms and optimizing each of those platforms to their fullest. So for video, I'm optimizing to get as many video views. For native, I'm optimizing to get as many people on site as possible for an engaged visit. Social and display, trying to get as many true conversions as possible. And ultimately, what this allows you to do by focusing on this is you're able to have a conversation with somebody all the way through the process. Remember the way that today's customer dynamic works. So people are constantly cross-shopping. They're making lots of different research portals where they're going to visit. There's a lot of time spent researching, but they're making decisions quickly. They're also largely brand agnostic, and especially at the point of purchase, if you're not having a conversation with them up funnel about why they should care with your brand and what you're able to do, there's certain costs that you'll incur typically with, at the point of purchase, you may have lower conversion rates. So what we find is that when you're focusing up on the higher funnel, you're going to get a lower cost per conversion with the total budget and higher conversion rates. You're also going to get higher customer satisfaction. And ultimately, because of the different types of devices people are using and how much people are using this video, if you're able to put the right message in front of the right person at the right time with the right platform and on the right device and have that right conversation with the right creative all the way through, that's when you're really able to run a very highly effective and engaged omni-channel campaign. And ultimately, what we end up recommending is typically a blend of those two strategies. So if you're thinking about everything competing, that would be down on the buying signal. So all of your remarketing campaigns could compete across all different platforms. So, is my remarketing on video versus display versus social driving the best possible ROI? But on the prospecting side, they should all have separate eCPAs by platform. So, you have your native is driving, your display is driving, your social is driving. Ultimately, what you're doing when you're building this out this way is you're building that assembly line that's omnipresent, and you're constantly mining your primary, secondary, and tertiary videos with the right media mix to drive the right consumers to your site and drive them down into doing business with you through the most efficient means possible. So that's all I have. That was a lot to get through, I know, in 50 minutes. But here's some more information. I'm going to turn it back over to Jen now and see what we have on the question side. But if you want to learn more, please check us out at www.adtaxi.com, or you can email us at info@adtaxi.com. There's also more resources on our site. The link is shown here. But I'll turn it back over to Jen to see if we have any questions and what those questions are.
Yeah, certainly. So we do have a few already, but if additional questions come up, please feel free to pop them into the questions box and we will try to get to those. So the first one is, I'm interested in B2B. Is this relevant for B2B, or is it just relevant for B2C?
Great question. It is actually relevant for both. And with B2B, it's a little bit of a different decision-making process. With B2B, depending on the type of business you are and the type of business you're trying to reach, the end decision maker may not be the person who is assigned to make the initial contact. So there's a little bit of a potential for disconnect when you have that initial person going out and making the research, and then there's the end decision maker. But ultimately, what you want to there's tons of different data on the B2B side, so we can target people based on the types of industries they work in. There's a lot of things that can be done on the search side from a B2B perspective for the types of things people are searching for. Most of the time when we're doing B2B, we have it can typically be a heavier blend of search than the other platforms, but native is great for B2B. Social can also be great for B2B if you have enough data where you can mine, to reach that person who's first making that that contact. But it absolutely works for both platforms and or both objectives. It just depends on the initial mix that's set up and also geography, but absolutely it can work for both for sure. And we work with a lot of B2B clients, so great question.
Great. And the next one is, I don't have the greatest website and I really just want phone calls for my service business. What's the best platform to drive phone calls?
That is also a great question. So, I focused a lot on the programmatic side here, but typically if you want to drive phone calls for a business, search is absolutely the number one platform that's going to drive phone calls. Most of the time with search, it's very heavy on intent. And I think, did you say it was a home service business?
Service, yep.
Service business. Yeah, so depending on the type of service business that you have, search is definitely going to be key. With search, especially on mobile, you can do phone or call extensions. You can put the phone number directly in the ad. And on desktop, that could be something where you can track that. And also on mobile, you can see click to call. But that's the one way, depending on what you can do on your site. You can also there's different call tracking optimization software out there. If you can put some code on your site where you can dynamically replace the phone number, you can start seeing which keywords are actually going to be driving the highest amount of phone calls. And you can listen to all the calls. And that's one way where you can sort of optimize to know, okay, these are the keywords that are driving, that are my non-branded keywords that are driving the best possible outcome for phone calls on me. But search is definitely key on the cost per call side. Now one thing one caveat to that I'll mention is that depending on the type of service business you have, it may be a really expensive cost per click on search. If it's highly competitive for, say, plumbing or for HVAC, for if you're in like heating or cooling, air conditioning, if it's in the summertime and you live in a hot area, and there's a high potential you have a heat wave and on lots of people's air conditioners break, you may end up paying a really high cost per click or cost per call on those clicks. So in that instance, investing in an up funnel, in a branding, just to be brand awareness campaign so that people know your name, can make a huge difference in the fact that if somebody's searching you out by name versus by HVAC dealer or heating, air conditioning repair, East Bay, that would end up driving a much lower cost per click and cost per call if you have people searching you out by name. So it varies by business, but search is typically the number one platform for driving phone calls. Great question.
And besides LinkedIn sponsored updates, what are other native ad options for B2B?
Another great question. So there's multiple different native exchanges out there. We have 5 of them built into our platform, and we're able to kind of optimize across all of those. But you can run in-feed native ads through Nativo, through Taboola, through Share-Through, Triple Lift. There's lots of different platforms that are out there. We're integrated with all of them, so we can optimize across all of them for what's driving the best. But typically with that, you'd want to focus on the types of content that people would be interested in for the whoever you're trying to reach on the B2B side, right? So let's say you're going after like a CFO because that's the audience you're going after. In that instance, maybe you'd want to run native articles on Forbes, or you'd want to run native articles on Wall Street Journal or something along those lines. You can buy those types of sites typically through native platforms, and in there it will be sort of an in-feed approach where somebody's reading those articles, and you might have an in-feed ad pop up, sort of either in the middle of the page or near the bottom of the page that would talk about what your company does relative to the type of content that's on that page. So there's lots of different things you can target there. You can also target by industry vertical on native. So if you know that you can align data with that. So if you can target different news type sites, and then if you're going after let's say sales managers or marketing managers or hiring managers or whatever it is you're going after on the B2B side, you can layer that data so that that you're only going after those people on news sites for in-feed native. So there's lots of different options out there, and we recommend typically testing those out and then measuring back again to see what's generating the lowest possible cost per contact or cost per engaged visit. But great question.
All right, I think we have time for one more. So how do you deal with the question or with the issues of duplicate conversions? If you're running retargeting across all of these channels, wouldn't there be the chance for duplicate conversions? And if so, what channels would get the credit?
That is another great question. So there's a couple of different ways to go about this. Specifically, when you're using pixels from, so Facebook is a bit of a walled garden. They have their own pixels. AdWords is a bit of a walled garden as well, in the sense that they have their own pixels. Technically, with our platform that we use, anything on the real-time bidding side, from display, from native, and from video, those all use the same pixels. So in that instance, we're able to see which of those metrics, which of those platforms is really driving the conversion from the remarketing side, and actually all of the touch points in between. But depending on what you can do with the data, you can look at the conversion timestamp. You can sort of do dedupes on your own. But the other way to do it would be, take a look at, there's going to be some duplication with Facebook and Google in general. But they may both perform at different rates. So again, if you look at that sort of third-party benchmark, where you have Google Analytics being that, that third-party benchmark, as long as that's growing and you're seeing, if you're optimized and move a little bit more into Facebook because maybe that's driving a lower CPA for lead, or maybe the same thing on Google, you're able to kind of move budget between those two. There's a way to kind of push that through and drive the best possible performance by tweaking your media mix on what's going to generate the best possible result there. There's additional programs out there or platforms out there from an attribution standpoint. Typically, those are third-party platforms, and those get expensive. Those are going to be in like the six-figure range, potentially annually, to run. And we generally advocate that you put most of that money towards media, but depending on what you're interested in and the scope of your business, there are other options out there as well too, other than just sort of like a manual benchmark. So that's a great question. Happy to follow up on that afterwards.
Great. All right, well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to everyone for attending. We will be sending out a link to the recording to you tomorrow morning. And please feel free to reach out to us or check us out at adtaxi.com, or send an email to info@adtaxi.com if you have any questions. Thanks for your time and have a great day.